Mr. Campbell, hi, nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm a huge fan of yours, and I have to preface the interview by saying my editor, Nick Boswick, would kill me if I didn't tell you that Mask of Zorro is one of his favorite movies of all time. He loves it. He wanted me to thank you for it.
Oh, he's the one. Okay, good.
No, it's a great movie. Kidding, it's a classic. All right, so
Anyway, so
what I wanted to preface this off with is I've always really enjoyed your style of action on your movies. Particularly, I mean, I'm thinking about going all the way back even to No Escape. I think back in '94, you kind of have this physical style of action that really hurts in your movies, right? It doesn't seem fake in Hollywood. And I really loved the style of fighting that you use in the Protege, because it's very different from kind of what you're seeing in John Wick and you're seing in a lot of the other
sure.
now. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your action design and influences, because I think it's one of your great strengths.
Yeah, I think I just have certain ground rules about action. One is it should be possible.
Mhm.
But in other words, you see so much action with the help of CG and so forth, which is frankly bullshit. I mean, the sequences, you just don't believe a word of them, right? I try to avoid CG. Probably the only thing I do in CG is to remove wire removal, stuff like that, obviously for stunts and things. I always like action to be character driven rather than just a block of action for action's sake. And also to try and make the action a little bit more inventive.
Yeah.
In other words, not the old tropes we've seen in, so many films, where they beat the hell out of one another and there's not a drop of blood. They sort of keep punching and so forth, right? Um, and so really that's my sort of, and also to stay back with the camera so you see what's happening, not these huge close-ups with sound effects off screen and all that rubbish. I think Bourne is the only one that's ever made that successful, if you see what I mean.
It's
Uh,
funny you say that, because I actually thought that when I saw The Foreigner, that you were probably the only Western director that ever actually got Jackie Chan right in terms of the action. Like, I thought you were the only one that kind of nailed it.
well,
And
the thing was, I wouldn't let him do any of his usual tropes. I said, you can't do that. It all has to be sort of military based, and surprisingly, he went for it. So there's none of that pulling the tablecloth off and like wrapping three heads around it and then putting a ladder on top of them. None of that stuff.
well, it wouldn't have worked in a movie like that because it was a gritty, tough movie, which I
Yeah,
thought was really underrated.
yeah, he was great in that, wasn't he? It was a good, it was an interesting film.
Well, I loved having that you had Maggie Q in this movie, because I've always thought that Maggie Q was super underrated as an actress and as an action star. So it was, when I heard that she was going to be like the action lead in this, I was really impressed, because I really like her, and I was just wondering what it was like working with her, because she seems to kind of have it all, and I wonder why she's not like a massive star.
Well, you're right. I mean, she should be a massive star. The point is that she does have it all. She's a superb actress, and she's obviously great at the action because she trained with Jackie Chan. So she combines both. When I cast her, I had no idea she was good at action. I just saw her doing. I just saw a clip, a 3-minute clip of her with Ethan Hawke, which I was very impressed with her acting. Our character had to be Vietnamese. Well,
Yeah.
she's half Vietnamese, right? Which was really important. Um, but I was hugely impressed with her acting, and I cast her on that alone. I didn't see La Femme Nikita. I wasn't here when that was out, but the action, of course, was the icing on the cake. I mean, it was a real. She was great at that, and she did most of it herself.
Well, okay, so you say that Maggie Q had training, and I know obviously Jackie Chan had all the training in the world. So how do you compare then working with them in an action flick to working with somebody like Michael Keaton, who I imagine doesn't have the kind of training that they do? I could be wrong, but I assume that he doesn't, because he's also has a really cool fight scene in this movie
Yeah,
that
well, the thing is, of course, he hasn't had the training of Maggie. He doesn't do those sort of films. I mean, he does. Well, the films that he's done. If you look at Birdman and some of his great work and so forth, he's not an action man like that. But what he did was he really knuckled down and he rehearsed, and to get the action as good as possible. And yeah, we had to do a few takes to get it absolutely right, if you know what I mean. So a combination of all of that with the help of the stunt arranger and so forth. He really delivered. I mean, he's very impressive with what he did.
Well, there's something extra cool about that too, when you see like a guy that you don't necessarily know as an action hero doing this crazy action stuff. Because I'd never seen, even in Batman, I'd never seen that before. Michael doing that.
No, well, it was also essential to make him a killer too.
Yeah.
You know, there's one sequence in the film where you're in a you're in that alleyway, and then at the end of that, he's quite vicious the way he deals with those people. But it was sort of essential to make him, equal to Maggie, if you see what I mean, in terms of the balance of the two characters.
There's a cool theme that I noticed in some of your work, and I also may be reading into it too much, but you have these, okay, I wouldn't call them friendly villains, but they're these likable villains that seem to have almost a cool relationship and almost want to be friends with the lead. So I'm thinking, Stuart Wilson in No Escape, one of the greatest villains ever, Killian, and then but then 006 and Goldeneye, and then Michael Keaton in this one with Maggie Q.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've ever done consciously, or is it just?
Well, yeah, I don't like, we don't want mustache twirling villains. I mean, at the end of the day, like in Zorro, Stuart Wilson played the villain, but he wasn't black and white. He was a sort of tragic figure who believed they should put up statues to him. It was so it's always better to have your villains having some kind of, there's another side to them, as it were. They're not just sort of guys dressed in black, who go around torturing and killing people. They've got to have a character within themselves. That's the point. And so they're just not black and white. They at least are a somewhat rounded character, which is much more interesting.
I also always really liked the look of your movies, because they're very kind of, they each have a kind of a distinct style, but there's like a lack of kind of pretense about them. Like, I think that's what I've always really liked about them, is that you always keep the action very clear and easy to see. And I appreciated that. And I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about working with your DP in this movie, because I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, I was the David Tattersall. He actually shot Green Mile. He shot The Majestic. He also did 3 Star Wars. He's done a lot of it. And he and I sort of have a very close relationship. We can sort of, we can shorthand with each other what we want. We discuss the look of the film, and then, and the other thing is you have to move fast. It's an independent movie in a sense, so you can't. You've really got to know what you're doing and just move fast in order to get what you want. So, and he's very fast at lighting, but he gives a very rich look, to the film, and enormously talented. He's sort of, and he and I get on very well together. In fact, I've just done another film with him, which I've just finished. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. Okay, one last question. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, would you ever consider directing another James Bond movie? We're all waiting for you to do one.
Oh yeah, I would, because it's a new James Bond.
Yeah, that's your thing, and you do so well.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the answer is sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope it happens.
If they ever ask me.
No, well, nobody launches a Bond like you. I mean, the 2 for 2. So thank you very much for your time, and appreciate talking to you. It was great.
That's great. Thanks very much.
And I love the movie, by the way. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot.